You will want to drop everything you're doing and listen to Benjamin Owen, ex-athlete, now coaching top leaders around the world.
3 years of working as a transformation coach is that coaching was way more powerful than training people to help change their life.
What made you do that? Why did you decide to go, this is not just about physical health, I'm going to start coaching these people?
It's strategy and self. You know, you can have the best strategy in the world, but if you are ill-disciplined, if you are being a victim, you're not going to make that great strategy work. So what I help leaders do is, the first thing you need to do is, what is X? What are you trying to 10X? 10X is actually expansive discipline in the way that it forces you to disrupt everything. There's primal emotions, like a lot of guys, I work with guys a lot in the middle part of my coaching career, and it's like this insatiable need to go and either watch pornography or go and check some stats or go and scroll or go and trade. They're like, I can't carry on with my day until I deal with this urge.
If you're feeling stuck, you're tired of bad habits and you're unsure how everyone else is staying sharp and you just can't do it, then you will want to drop everything you're doing and listen to Benjamin Owen, ex-athlete, now coaching top leaders around the world. In this episode, you're going to walk away with a simple 3-step discipline plan that you can start following immediately. You're going to have a quick stop button to end all self-sabotage before it even starts. And finally, you're going to have a daily CEO scorecard that we're going to put in the link somewhere that you can download that's going to keep your energy high and your growth steady. Listen in, use these tools, and walk away ready to win. Let's go. Benjamin, it's a pleasure to have you here. And I want to start with the fact that I'm incredibly intrigued with your social media. The content that you're putting out there, every day I see you running in the scorching heat in Dubai. It's like 42 degrees right now if anyone's not in Dubai and doesn't know what that means. So I want you to start from the beginning. Who are you and what is the mission that you're on?
Thank you, Hussein. I'm really grateful to be on the podcast, and great question to start with. I have been a runner my whole life, and if you want to go all the way back, I realized at a really young age that fitness was transformational. I remember, a big part of my upbringing, we were an outdoorsy kind of family, and we did everything outside. We did lots of activities. We were very connected, had lots of love in the family. And a lot of what we did was train hard, push ourselves, race and challenge each other. We had a very competitive household. And at the age of 18, I lost my stepfather. And I remember looking at my stepdad as he was deteriorating with cancer. And although I understood like fitness and health was so important, I realized that wasn't the only component of helping someone be healthy. So, I was training my friends from the age of 14 years old. I was training to be an elite athlete at the same time, but I was absolutely fascinated with personal transformation from like yourself. We were talking earlier. I've been just really, really obsessed about personal transformation from the age of, 12, 13 years old. And I realized that if I wanted to help someone transform, not just in their fitness and their health and their weight, that they had to do things behind the scenes to transform as well. And that has just led on a journey of self-discovery from the age of 18, 25, 30. As my journey's gone on, I've just really just dived into the multifaceted approach to personal transformation. And this led me to, first of all, start in personal training and elite strength and conditioning coaching. I thought I wanted to work with athletes. So I started a business called Fitness and Speed Training in North Wales. And if anyone listening to this podcast knows North Wales, there's no elite teams there. There's no football teams. There's not a lot of elite teams. And it wasn't a success. It was a success that I got to work with varying different elite athletes. I got to work with some professional football teams. But what I really found challenging was that elite athletes, they were very easy to coach, but often you were dealing with a culture that was quite toxic or quite limiting as a coach. And so I quickly exited that, and I wanted to go into having my own place. I wanted to create my own culture where people could come and transform their life. So I started a boot camp in, I think it was like 2010, 2011. And I attracted like really high performing people because it was really early in the morning before work. And that spawned where I could just go and work with somebody, help them transform their health. But people were curious about how I was so diligent and disciplined about personal transformation with myself. And then when I built my gym, I actually built loads of rooms in my gym so I could start coaching people. And I would be sat opposite somebody. They would come in wanting to transform their weight, but quickly that conversation would transform into how are you leading your life and your business and your family. And so what I realized within about, say, 3 years of working as a transformation coach is that coaching was way more powerful than training people to help them change their life. Like if you came into my gym, Hussein, I would maybe have an hour with you and I'd train you in the gym, and I make you realize sometimes impossible goals in the gym. But what was really transformational is the conversations that we had whilst we were training. And so I realized that I needed to be a coach in order to get the biggest ripple effect possible. And so I built a really successful fitness business, and that was a coach-led fitness business. And yeah, this has just been a journey. That's like kind of the underlying thread behind the whole journey has been staying so fit and healthy that every single day your energy is off the hook. It's really high, and that's what's helped me keep moving forwards.
I'm listening to this, and sometimes I listen to this and I go, oh, now we're both in the coaching industry. I probably understand or appreciate the answer to this, but I'm thinking about you back then. What made you do that? Why did you decide to go, this is not just about physical health, I'm going to start coaching these people?
Yeah, that's a great
question. What
makes
you do that?
I think it was failure. It's just like,
what do you mean?
I think I saw so many people fail with fitness so often, and I always have this dichotomy, especially in coaching. It's strategy and self. You can have the best strategy in the world, but if you are ill-disciplined, if you are being a victim, you're not going to make that great strategy work. But you could get somebody who has a terrible strategy, but they are so decisive, so diligent, so disciplined, they'll make anything work. And I was like, so it isn't, I think CEOs and leaders are always looking for great strategy. But sometimes you can have the best strategy in the world, but if you're not being the person that can execute that strategy, it's going to be troublesome. So what I realized very, very early in my career is I had to work on both with people. I had to get.
What made you realize? Was there something you saw or heard that made you go, you know what, this is not just about strategy? Because I'm trying to really get to, maybe there's a point there where you just had a client and they weren't losing the weight. You put your hands between your head and thought, what the hell is going on? Like, was there something like that? Because it's actually, what year was this?
This is like 2012, 2013.
Coaching was non-existent.
It was pretty much, it wasn't a big thing.
In those days.
I wouldn't have even called myself a coach then.
So what made you do that?
Well, I had a number of really successful guys who were clients. So it was particularly men, guys that had successful businesses.
And you were helping them with their health.
Yeah, and they would come to me saying, Ben, I've got a really successful business. My life is great. My family is great. But there's this one thing that I just can't do. And I would go away and I would write the Sistine Chapel of diet plans, training plans, and they still wouldn't get results. And I was like, I'm actually going to have to coach you personally. I'm going to have to change who you are being as a person in order for you to get results on this program. And they're going to have to make a fundamental shift in self-concept, self-image to be able to do the things that they needed to do. So a lot of that came down to discipline. It came down to change. And so I got really, really into understanding behavior change coaching. And so, it was like massive frustration. You had these seemingly really successful men who just wouldn't take action on simple things. And, fast forward maybe like 3 to 5 years, I realized that the simple things really worked. But it was like having a really simple plan that someone could execute. And so, it was frustration that made me really dive into that.
I'm putting myself at where I was in 2012. I was somewhere cold on site in construction, and I'm thinking about going to lose weight, and then someone coaches me. I just don't think it was existent back then. So I have a question. Did anyone try and talk you out of that? Did you have any colleagues, friends that are like, Benjamin, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
You're a health coach. Why are you talking to this guy about his wife? You know?
Yeah. Actually, that's a really good question. And I remember the first time. So I was charging personal training fees, so that significantly lower than coaching fees at the time. And I remember I hired a coach. I hired a sales coach, and I created this program. It was £3,000. It was £3,000, which wasn't a huge amount, but it was relatively big for the local area. No one was charging that where I
Plus
lived.
contextually in 2012.
Yeah, in North Wales and Conway. And I sat down with it for a coffee with this client and talked to them about the program, talked about, we had a sales conversation. And I said the fee, and he was like, Ben, I'm worried about you. Like, you shouldn't be doing this. Don't, how come you charging this? This isn't, normal to be charging this. And he gave me this,
And it's a lot or it's a little?
He told me it was like really, like, it's way too much.
Oh, a lot.
Way too much.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And I remember looking at him, and I was thinking, this was the first person I'd offered this like higher ticket coaching program to. And he was like, whoever's giving you advice, you need to stop this. And it was like a real dressing down. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, well, I told my coach at the time, he said, just right, that's number one, go out and ask some more people about the program. And I the second person, I went and did a talk at a local event, and I described this guy, I described his day, I described his struggles and all the things that he had problems with in his life, like discipline, his wife, his kids, his his energy. And this guy came to me and said, hey, listen, like, who you've just described there, I'm this guy. That's me. Can we have a conversation? I told him the price. He was like, yeah, no problem. And he was a great client. He's still a really good friend of mine now. And that person believing that problem, his health being that significant, that he would pay that money, was the transformation for me, because I signed lots of clients up after that. And that's where the coaching side began.
So what did that teach you then?
Wow. I think that I knew deep down that was going to be the thing anyway, that you're going to get people. I've heard a great saying really early on in my career: people value their health, but they also put a value on it. And what that means for me, it was that traditionally the value that people put on their health is a gym membership, maybe a health check, in Dubai, maybe getting some bloods done now and again. Some people don't even do that. And my value for my health was significant. I could see the value for that because I could see the value for ill health. And I'll actually share a story, actually quite an interesting one. I had a guy, a developer, come into my office one day, and I'd given up personal training. He said, Ben, I want you to personal train me. I was like, hey man, I'm done personal training. I coach, but I don't personal train. He goes, how much, how much do you charge? And I was like, well, it'd have to be something like 12,000-15,000. And it was a big fee, for the time. And he said, oh, well, that's expensive. And we talked a little bit, and I was like, well, how much is it going to cost you to be dead? And I just said it.
Extreme,
I just said it straight up.
It's kind of true, People don't think of it that way.
And he said, I think it was in the millions. It was like 3.5 million. And I was like, that's a really interesting answer. And he said, it was a really interesting question. I said, well, why did you answer 3.5 million? He goes, that's the amount that my kids will inherit in debt if I don't fulfill on these next couple of jobs.
Oh, wow.
So he realized that if he didn't stay alive, because he said, I feel like I'm going to die. I can't go to the doctor. They're just going to tell me I'm overweight. I need to sort this out quickly. And I said, this is my fee. Let's create an agreement. And we helped him lose 6 stone over 6 months. And, he was an older guy, and it was transformational for him. And that's the thing. I think it was that, go back to what I said, that people value their health, they'll put a value on it. His value for health before that was a country club membership where he spent, £50 to £100 a month, when he sat in the sauna, thought he was helping him transform his health. But when he started working with me, he really understood like what health really meant to him. And within a couple of months, he was walking up hills. He'd lost 6 stone after 4 or 5 months. And he transformed his life and his business.
Fascinating. And I think it's true. And I think it comes back down to the immediate pleasure that people see like, oh, I'm gonna go to the country club. It's immediate pleasure. My friends are there. It's fun. But they're not seeing the long-term pain. And really, it's about refocusing people. What you really did was made that real for him. You said, listen, what's it going to cost you to die? And he thought, whoa, 3.5 million for my kids in debt. And as a result, now price became, well, price is always contextual, right? Fast forward to today, what's the mission that you're on?
So when I was health coaching, I realized that even though health coaching was important, it was part of a bigger puzzle. It was part of a bigger part of what I wanted to help people with. And it was leadership. It was leadership and helping people be the best leader they could possibly be. I always sought out leadership. That's something we know. I think we both have. I've got a similar desire for that. I would go and hire coaches, mentors, therapists. I would go in men's groups, and what I've realized is that strong transformational leadership is the backbone of a business. It's the backbone of a family. It's the backbone of a lot of things in life. And the mission I'm on is to partner with the best leaders in the world to create a bigger ripple. And now, when I had the business was called Fast Way to Fitness. Every single day we would be servicing anywhere between 150 to 300 clients would come through the door. Like a lot of clients. And that was my ripple. I'd help 300 people that would go on maybe their organizations or their families, and health was going to be the vehicle for the ripple effect. What I've realized, if I can partner with leaders and make them better leaders, the ripple effect is exponentially bigger, because they go and lead organization change, their families, and do big things. So my ripple can be magnified. And so my mission is to help CEOs, high performers, leaders find the parts of themselves that are really being held back or shut down, or they've never had that person advocate for, so that they can go and fulfill their potential. Like, that's the biggest thing for me, is actualizing potential. And so I realized that for myself, probably about 5 years ago, the hardest time in my life was when I was living below my potential. And I knew I was doing it. I was holding myself back. I was playing small, and going through that period of maybe 3 to 5 years when I knew that I was not performing as well as I could be was the hardest time of my life. And I know that there are leaders out there that struggle with the same thing.
And the hidden enemy too that's stopping you from operating at your highest potential is?
Part X.
Which is?
So if you're a leader listening to this podcast, and let's take you, for example. I'm going to need you here saying, I think it's going to be the easiest way to explain this, is that every force has an equal and opposing force. You've got a huge force for growth. Just talking to you downstairs, and you've got a huge desire to grow and change and transform your life, but you're going to be met by an equally and powerful destructive force. So, and it's just that's the spiritual physics, if you wish. Now, the biggest problem is that as leaders, we're met with this destructive force, but we don't even know what it is. And that destructive force stops you from actualizing your potential. It stops you from doing the things that needs to be done. It stops you, but it stops you in ways that sometimes you can't even spot. So, for example, a big weapon of Part X is attention. So if you think about this, that your attention right now, you listen to this podcast, or we're recording this podcast, we're deeply engaged, we're focused. When your focus is really honed, you're so powerful. Think about, when was the last time you did deep work and you did something for 2 to 3 hours and you moved mountains? If you think about the modern climate, your focus is being fractured into tiny little pieces. Emails here, scrolling there, the wife calling in, on the phone. You've got your iWatch, you've got your iPad, binging and bonging. Your attention is being fractured into tiny little pieces. So what your inner enemy would do is get your focus and fracture it into tiny little pieces. So then you look up after an hour or 2 hours and you've done nothing other than react to all these little stimuli. And so what I think I realized is that people talk about self-sabotage a lot, but they don't know how the nitty-gritty parts of it. So what I help leaders do is actually spot and label. I was like, oh yeah, do you know what? I spend a lot of my time distracted. Well, what are you actually going to do to limit that? You know, like you talk about the Limitless podcast, is that to be limitless, you actually, one of the most powerful weapons is your attention. And how long can you keep it on one thing until it's done? So I realized that because I thought I was just the only guy that had this. I was like, I am.
Which most people think it's like a unique problem.
Yeah,
it's actually,
yeah.
People come to me with these unique problems, and I say, I'm really sorry to tell you that you're not that special.
Yeah.
Like maybe your mum, to your mum, you might be that special, but in the world, you're not that special. Everyone's going through this. So I like the fact that you said that. Most people think that it's just their problem. When in your case, you thought it was just you. So
I think it was, for me, it was definitely attention as well. Like I'm a guy, I can focus intensely on something for like 3 to 5 hours and get it done. Equally, I can be scattered into a million different pieces. And I thought, oh, should I go down the ADHD self-diagnosis route? And I was like, no, it's not. It's just a symptom of being a very focused, powerful individual. You're going to have these times where you're deeply focused, but you're equally going to have these times where you're deeply fractured and scatty. And the problem I think that people have is that when they feel either side, they label it as good and bad. So Part X is a series of symptoms that you can spot that are designed to do one thing. And I know your background is like state, and you learned a lot about the work you did with your background is like state. If this part of you can steal your state, so you don't feel like you can move forwards, that you don't feel that you're good enough, that you've got this victim narrative in the back of your head that you believe, if it can steal the state so you don't feel like you can move forward and change, it's doing its job. You might have heard the governor or the part of you that stops you from moving forwards because the future is unknown, it'll keep you the same and safe. Yeah. So the Part X's job is there to make sure that you don't grow and change, because growth and change is very uncomfortable for the brain. I just started really getting into self-sabotage. And the reason I got into that, because it was happening to me. I really struggled with that. And I was like, how come I've got this huge desire to grow and do good, yet I do such dumb things? And when I started to understand this, I worked with a company, who wrote the book The Tools. So they worked with like Jonah Hill and all these, famous movie stars, and I worked with some of their coaches. I really got to understand the mechanics of Part X, which is self-sabotage. And one of the biggest things I found is just spotting and labeling that in myself. I started to overcome it way, way quicker. A really good one is hopelessness. So you see a knockback as a total knockout. So we were talking earlier about that one sales conversation. I go in there, I propose a sale, it gets rejected. Instead of saying that's just a knockback, I go, I can never make it as a coach.
Yeah.
That was and I could see this in my clients. I was like, well, that's just a knockback. It's not a total knockout. And you see, when you start to be really clear about what self-sabotage really is, it becomes easier to fight it. And that was the thing I started to see. And again, did it exist in the health world? Absolutely. It exists in the diet world. It exists in the business world. And when you can start to help people overcome that, they can start to build momentum.
It's really interesting because I'm listening to you, and then you mentioned, my background is like in states. I thought that was it, like helping people get to a good state. And then I realized there was a prerequisite to that. So like emotional states are really, really important because there's even science behind it. Like if you're in an amazing state, you're like 25% more confident, 33% more likely to take risks and all that stuff. But as I listen to you, I think the recurring theme that comes before that is your environment. And that's now my work, actually. The majority of my work now is about your environment is stronger than your willpower. I got into this deep dive into studying environments, and I found out the wildest stuff. And I think your environment is stronger than your willpower. The thing that's going to determine whether it's a knockout or a knockback is your environment. Because imagine now you stayed in that environment. And by the way, a lot of business people do this. They force the same environment to accept their product, their offer, their service, rather than going, okay, that's a knockback. This is not the right environment. This guy's not going to pay me. what environment will. So then with you, obviously this guy's like 3K, too much. You went somewhere else, environment. Oh my God, is that it? Let's do it. And most people don't realize that. Now, the reason why I'm really tapping into environment here is because I want to understand something. Imagine I'm listening to this. I want you to paint a picture because I believe that awareness is the first step to cure. It's not the cure itself, but it's the first step to cure. I want you to paint a picture of somebody's environment. Maybe they're listening to this right now. They're sitting down and they're not even aware that self-sabotage is at play. What does their environment look like? Like, paint the picture. How do I know? How do I become aware of the fact that this is in play? I've got self-sabotage. It's happening to me.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, so I think the best indicator or the reverse indicator is your emotions, your emotional health. That you're frustrated all of the time. Like, I think and not the physical environment, but your emotional environment is that for me. I'm going to answer this one. Is for me, I was just frustrated all the time. I was like, why am I not as far ahead as I want to be? A constant frustration that I sit down at my laptop and then an hour goes 2 hours and I feel like I've gone nowhere. And I had an office at the back of my gym and I would get interrupted all the time and I would sit down and nothing would be done. No deep work, I wouldn't move forwards, and I was reactive. The second thing, I was reactive. That's everything felt like a reaction. I wasn't creating. I wasn't creating. I wasn't in the creator seat. I was reacting to phone calls, to clients, to other people's wants, other people's goals. And the third thing is that there was an echo chamber. Is that people would just that people would never see me as someone who would self-sabotage. They couldn't. They was like, "What, you self-sabotage? But you've built all this, great business." And so there was no one would like point that out to me and say, "Do you know that you self-sabotage?" And it wasn't until a former coach of mine said, "Ben, have you ever thought that you self-sabotage?" And I was like, "No, I don't self-sabotage. I'm like all about moving forwards and growing." He goes, "Can you see all this stuff that you're doing is self-sabotage?" And I was like, I never wanted that label because I believe that self-sabotage is something that a failure or someone who wasn't going somewhere did. But actually, if you're a leader, you're more susceptible to self-sabotage than anyone else. That's the thing. It's like, and until I really understood that if you're a leader, your force for growth is bigger than anyone else's. So you're going to be met with that equal and opposing force for destruction. And you've got to know how to battle that.
So how do we begin to neutralize it and we can actually start to dive into the 3 types of discipline? Now I'm aware of it. Oh my God, I'm listening to Benjamin. I'm frustrated all the time. This is me. I've been in denial. I'm trying to say that, I'm not self-sabotaging. I'm now aware I'm self-sabotaging. How do I begin to neutralize that? And then, let's dig into the 3 types of discipline.
Yeah, so the first thing is labeling. You're spotting it, like hopelessness. There's a victim narrative. There's primal emotions. Like a lot of guys, I work with guys a lot in the middle part of my coaching career, and it's like this insatiable need to go and either watch pornography or go and check some stats or go and scroll or go and trade. They're like, I can't carry on with my day until I deal with this urge. Like that's a really, really an impulse. So impulse control is a big one as well. So all of those things are the symptoms. When you realize that these are out of control, you then instill the discipline, which are the 3 types of discipline. So I always saw myself as a disciplined guy. Are you a disciplined guy? Would you say you're a disciplined guy?
It's interesting. I'm going to be very honest. Depends on the day.
Yeah.
I resonate a lot with what you said. Sometimes I'm like, whoa, how did I get all that done? And sometimes, transparently this morning, I was preparing for this podcast. I do a lot of preparation and I'm like reading my notes and I'm just like, what is wrong with this brain? You know what I mean? Why is it not working? Why is it not working? You know what I mean? Oh my God, Benjamin's going to be here soon. So, I got up, I looked like an absolute psycho in the lobby downstairs. I'm walking up and down, I'm reading my notes. I'm doing this. And, then I walked around. And then afterwards, like, I just had a coffee, I chilled. And actually, I thought, I'm going to reset. So I literally shut the thing down and I just started daydreaming about something else. And then when I opened it back up, I almost came back to it. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay, now the brain's working. So then I was good to go. So again, I'm just being very honest. Depends on the day.
Yeah.
Because I think I don't know if you're going to tie this in, but it's how I tie in discipline with consistency. So I think most people think consistency is hitting it 100% every day. I used to think that until I learned that consistency is like, you're going to have 100% days, you're going to have 10% days. You're going to have 66% days. As long as the mean average is like above, I don't know, for me it's like 70%. As long as the average over a 7-day period is above 70%, I'm generally going to celebrate that week. But anyway, I went too long about the discipline. But yeah, I think I'm disciplined depending on the moment and the time.
Yeah. I think I was the same. And I think that's what people live is like, oh, I'm either on or off. Like you've probably heard your clients say this, is that I have the same, is I'm either all or nothing, Ben. And I'm like, oh, that sounds exhausting, you know. It's like, and I think that when people hear the word discipline, they struggle. They like, some people say I'm not disciplined person, and actually, the origin of this, and just going a little bit deeper, is that discipline is the internalized structure of the father. And there's so many people, so many guys, so many women that have got daddy issues. They haven't had a present father, so they haven't learned the discipline of a man. You know, the masculine part of a relationship is the discipline. And
I love that.
Yeah.
Can you go deeper on that?
I can, yeah, absolutely. Because I realized that my dad is a great man, but him and my mum separated when I was 4, maybe 3. So I didn't get a lot of exposure to my dad. And so I was always going seeking male guidance, male leadership, because I was like, show me how to be a man, show me how to be a leader. And a lot of the masculine figures that I would learn from, they had really good structure. They were very disciplined men in different ways. And this is the key part of, you know, one of the things that I teach guys and I taught guys in a program was that a woman can't teach a man to be a man. A man has to teach a man to be a man. And this is no dig at women. This was like, actually, one of the biggest things that a man needs is what you can't be, you can't see. And so a lot of guys don't have discipline in these 3 areas, which we're going to talk about in a second, because they can't see it. They've never seen their dad. They've either not seen their dad. He's not present in the home. He's absent. He's in prison, or he's left. He's absent emotionally. So they've never had that like connection with their dad. So they've not really got that kind of imprint from their father. Or equally, they just haven't connected with their dad. They've you know, maybe he's passed. There's so many reasons that we haven't had that experience. So then what happens is we've got this person living in the world. They've got poor discipline. They've got to learn it somehow. And that's where, you know, being parts of groups, being in sport, being in part of a business, is that we start to develop these 3 disciplines. But the problem being is there are 3 parts to discipline. So the first one is structural discipline. Now, structural discipline is the ability to build and create structures that create goals. Your background is project construction,
yeah. So tunneling industry.
So I can imagine your ability to build structures is phenomenal.
Sometimes
like,
too much.
Yeah, just like
it's interesting actually. I was thinking earlier, like preparation, too little preparation, very bad. Too much preparation makes you too rigid.
Yeah.
So you have to find a dance.
You can see watching Hussein prepare, by the way. He was like super structured. I was like, this guy has got so much internal structure. But you mentioned about your father. And you know, your father, you had a good relationship with your father.
Yeah.
And he's structured guy.
It depends, man, honestly. but he was the masculine guy, you know, he's the leader, the provider, the protector. And he was like super like results focused. You know, he was like, you know, if he wanted something, he'd move heaven and earth to make it happen. He didn't really care about any obstacles. So I would call that discipline. I'd call that structure. From that frame.
Yeah, and structural discipline isn't about building structures. It's about building and breaking structures. So it's the ability to put things in your calendar and adhere to your calendar. You know, I think a lot of the work I did early on myself and with clients was, is it in your calendar? Yeah, I've got this in the calendar. Do you listen to it? Do you go and do what you've put in your calendar? And they don't. They don't obey their calendar. So what they then do is they have to go and get a manager or a boss and be led by someone else. I think that's what happens with like a lot of people in careers. They worry about not having that boss because they're like, well, who's going to lead me? Who's going to tell me what to do? It's like, well, your calendar. So structural discipline is that ability to build a structure that reflects a goal. So, and I was talking to a group, actually. I was speaking for a group last night, and I said, open up your calendar and just tell me, does that structure that you've put in place over the next 7 days, does that take you towards your goal? And 90% of the people said no, and that's always the answer. Like the actual goal I have, my 10x goal, if I was to carry on doing what I've got in my calendar over the next 7 days, I'm not going to get there. And that's what part of our work as coaches, we disrupt that structure. So the second half of that discipline is building structures, but having the discipline to break them when they don't work. Now, a lot of people who are overweight, the reason they're overweight is the structure was wrong. The structure led them to be an overweight person. So I would go in as a coach and we'd disrupt the structure, and that new structure on a Friday night, Saturday, Sunday would reflect someone who is going to get their goal. So structural discipline is the first one. And if you're listening to this, you've got to be honest with yourself that structural discipline, it means a lot of chaos and disruption. And people hate that because sometimes we fear chaos and disruption more than we fear the familiarity of having the same drumbeat or patterns that don't get us anywhere. And I actually, because of my background and, I talked about my parents' divorce and stuff, I came from chaos. I came from a home that was very, very unsure and unfamiliar, but I created a structure through fitness in that chaos.
So there was almost order in the chaos.
Yeah.
So look, we're going to move on to the second and the third level of structure, but there's a question that's just burning in my mind because we talked about the masculine, which I think I love. But I'm always trying to paint the opposite picture. So someone who was raised with their mum.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say feminine energy.
Yeah. So,
sometimes you have like masculine and feminine. What is it there that led to this chaos and structure for a man?
I think what happens when for me, I was raised by my mum. So I would become a bit of a nice guy. I was very emotionally intelligent. My mum's very emotionally intelligent. But I think what was absent is that the structures that I had from my mum just led to stability. They just led to stability. They didn't lead to growth.
So are we tying this to being more accommodating?
More accommodating, more people-pleasing, placating, all those sort of traits. I have and had them all. And part of what I think that happens especially when a guy, I'm going to talk about, I know women have this as well, but when a guy is like raised by his mother, one of the things that he might struggle with is discipline, because that's from the masculine, that's from the father.
And is that because they're more... So I'm trying to tie this into like a schedule, not necessarily a person. So why are they not following their schedule? Is it because they're like making decisions based on emotion? I don't feel like it.
100%.
Are they like accommodating?
Yeah.
The FOMO of like, I shouldn't be doing this, I should be doing that. Like, what is going on there?
Well, if you think about some of the most interesting clients I've ever worked with is military people. Anyone in the military, if they say they're going to do it, they're going to do it. They follow a structure, they stick to it. It's very masculine. Or the people I've struggled with to get results in the past is that they come from a therapeutic background, a healing background. They're so wonky and weird.
The stars have to align, and the chakras are worked with those people, and they're quite interesting.
And not that and this is not negging on either. It's just that some of those folk they trust feelings and stars and planetary alignments more than they trust their calendar. So it's kind of getting them to come to the middle.
Yeah, I worked with this lady who would like dictate everything. Safe to say it was a very short coaching agreement. She based everything based on her numerology of her birthday. Oh, my birthday's this, so this day I can't. It was challenging, trying to grow a 6-figure coaching business based on numerology. So it was a bit interesting. It didn't last. So then let's finish the second and third level of discipline. Then we'll start to think about the thing you mentioned there, the 10x. Then we'll kind of wrap it up.
I think they all tie together. And actually, you tied them together beautifully. I was really impressed by that. Is that so? You got structural discipline, you've got reactive discipline. It's the ability to challenge your thinking. So, for example, the biggest problem that a lot of people have is that they think it's stimulus and response. So if you've read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, you'll know that the final freedom that we all have is our ability to choose our attitude in any given set of circumstances. And what that means is that, say, for example, Hussein chooses to call me a negative thing or says something about me, he can say what he wants to say, but it's my discipline, it's my reactive discipline, it's my choice to be able to say, okay, that's just what you think. And I don't think that a lot of people have this reactive discipline, because what will happen is that they'll say things like, he made me angry. she's pissing me off. And what happened is, no, you're pissing yourself off about that thing. And so what reactive discipline is, it's the ability to slow down and choose how you're going to respond to a situation. And that, again, it came from watching clients. They would be doing really, really well. And all of a sudden they would have a life event and they would react to that. And so when it came to the accountability of, well, why did you not do what you said you were going to do last week? Oh, this happened in my life and I reacted to it, and it was not my fault. And they just didn't have the reactive discipline to do that. So the actual process of learning to be disciplined around your emotions is actually, reading Man's Search for Meaning, understanding that in any set of circumstances, we choose our state, we choose what we do in accordance to things. And coming from such a reactive background, I could see that, and I needed to do that work. We teach what we most need to learn, and I think you'll probably find this with your clients. As part of being a great coach is slowing someone down. And you mentioned your client that he was about to do a massive. He wanted to reclaim millions. You said your client wanted to reclaim millions.
Yeah. So one of my good guys, he reached out one day, and he had. I'm trying to stay very, very high level for the NDA reasons. He wanted to get a large sum of money, and he had agreed a deal with a party, trying to stay very high level, and the person the deal went, so the agreement went through, that guy made the money, but he just never called this guy to say, hey, here's your share of the sum. Now this guy reaches out to me, my client, and says, I'm going to go in guns blazing. What do you think? Kind of thing. You know what I mean? And I said, whoa. Like, told me the situation. He's like, well, we agreed this thing. Now he's got the fruit on the other side, and he hasn't reached out and given me my dues. And I was like, is that it? He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, I just work with a lot of people to know that this guy just got busy. Because the problem with some people is they are too honest. Like, I'm a guy, is if I agreed something with you, I made the money, I will willingly go take time out of my day to make sure I pay you. And we treat people how we treat others, and then we expect them to treat us back in the same way, but it doesn't really work that way. So this guy was going to go in guns blazing, and I said, well, man, listen, this sounds like a very simple thing. In my experience in a situation like that, you just have to say, hey, when's a good time to talk about our agreement? And then, the end of the story is they spoke about it. And the guy was like, oh yeah, like I've kind of forgot, whatever it is. Yeah, happy to give you the thing, and gave him the thing. And the opposite to that would have been him going in guns blazing, puts up friction. Now they're like competing. What do you mean? And even if this guy wanted to give him the money, because of the way he approached it, it's just a lot of friction, and potentially might not give him the money or long him off or be less likely to want to give it to him. Whereas if you just kind of like, hey, when's a good time to talk about it, we agreed this thing, what's happening, what's the deadline? So yeah, that's the story.
Yeah. So that is quintessentially reactive discipline. He came to you, he shared the default emotional response. With guys, it's anger. A lot of people's default tool for every situation is anger. They're quick to anger. Like, how am I going to deal with this late payer? Anger. How am I going to deal with my wife when she's annoying me? Anger. How am I going to deal with the kids? Anger. Like, guys' default response is anger. And so reactive discipline is saying, hey, do you know what? Historically, I just deal with things with anger all the time. Maybe it's because my dad did that. Maybe because it's his dad did that. And so reactive discipline is sometimes generational patterns that need to be broken. He's like, right, okay, well, instead of anger, I'm going to use love. I'm going to use curiosity. I'm going to use intrigue. And hey, you're saying, like, I'm curious. We haven't had a conversation about that money that you owe me. Would you be all right in opening that up again instead of, dude, you owe me money? It's just like, and I realized
this ties in. We're gonna come back to the third level of discipline. But this ties into your 3 questions of overwhelm.
Yeah.
Does it, in your mind, does that tie in?
I think what happens is that when we go in guns blazing, like you said, people just get overwhelmed and they're not sure of the situation and they don't move forwards. But the biggest one, the final part of discipline is expansive discipline.
So structural discipline, reactive discipline, expansive discipline. What is that?
Yeah, and we both live in Dubai. You know, we come from the UK, and a lot of people who live in Dubai, you know, if you come from Dubai, you'll know this, is that there are incredibly expansive thinkers in Dubai. Like,
Yes.
there are, you know, that was something like, I come from a very, very small town. Like, it was a very small town. People think differently there. They do think differently there. Coming to Dubai for me was a real shift in my expansive discipline, because you can see so much bigger. So expansive discipline is the ability to choose the uncomfortable, unknown, bigger pathway. So when I was in my gym, I'm going to say this, I was the king of the gym. I walk in every single day.
King of the jungle, yeah.
It was my gym, and like everyone knew me, and I would walk up to people like, "Hey man, how you doing?" And I was the king of the castle. And I knew that by leaving that gym and going online, moving to Dubai, nobody would know who I was. Nobody would know my name. And I even remember walking into the gym in where I live the first couple of weeks. It was really strange. No one knew me. It's like really humbling. Like,
crazy thing.
Yeah, my ego was going crazy. But the best thing was the anonymity. Equally, the worst thing was the anonymity. So expansive discipline is knowing that the jump sometimes from the zone of excellence to your zone of genius, it needs expansive discipline. There's the golden handcuffs we were talking about before, where people are super well paid, and I was actually speaking to someone this morning about it. See, people are super well paid for being excellent, but the scary thing is that they know this zone of genius exists. Probably what you knew when you were in the construction world, like, hey, actually, I've got so much more to offer the world.
Yeah, it's weird. And I didn't know what it was. I just want to put this out there. It's not like I went, oh yeah, I know what it is, coaching. I just knew there was more. Like, I'd go to work, I'd do the 12-hour shift, and I just feel so like empty, because I'm like, there has to be more to life than this.
Yeah, but you said you were well paid.
But that's the thing, you know. Man, I wish we had like an extra 30 minutes for this. We judge a lot of things based on money, but then we make the money, and then we're just like, there's got to be more than this. And what we think is the more money. And it takes a certain person, and, you know, I got to thank one of the first ever coaches I had, Adam. He's like one of the people that pulled me out of this. It's like, listen, what do you actually, forget about money, what do you actually want to do? What do you want to be? And it wasn't like I knew what I wanted to do. Like, we literally took out a piece of paper, and I had no clue. Took out a piece of paper, and we went, if I was doing that thing, what are all the things that are showing up in my life? And like, we went through this whole process that I'm not going to go deep into, but it was just looking outside of money. And that's, I think, the biggest problem most people have, is they always think that there's got to be more than this. It's like, let me make more money, but then they make more money. Actually, I'm going to share this because I think there's a lot of benefit in it. At this point, I've driven all the best cars, R8s, Lamborghinis, Porsches, you name it. I've been to all the world's best hotels. I've been all around the world. Last year, I did 22 countries in 3 months. And after you've done all of that, there's a level of, there's no more to look up to, so you've got to come down. And what I mean by that is, there's no more, when I drive the the Porsche, I'll be happy, or, you know, when I drive the Mercedes, I'll be happy, or when I stay in this weekend I was staying at the Guinness World Records highest infinity pool up in JBR, the address, and I was actually having this very thought. I was like, I could genuinely be here and still be miserable. So I've reached the pinnacle. So now I have to come down and be grateful.
Yeah.
I have to bring myself back and be present, because I can catch myself going, well, there's no more. So now I myself, I'm not talking about physical body, my mind has to come down and actually start to go, what can I be grateful for? How am I already grateful for this thing? Because I could easily be in that moment and not be grateful. I could easily be driving a best car and not be grateful. I can easily have a nice watch and not be grateful, because it's now, not because I'm ungrateful, it's just my law of familiarity.
Yeah. There's something that Sean Acor, a guy studies happiness, said, and this really stuck with me, is that happiness is the joy that we experience striving towards our potential. And I think that's what, it's going to lead us into our next part we're talking about, is that even as I'm working with the highest performing people that have done some of the best stuff, they still believe there's potential that's unmet. And I think that to feel happy, and ask them, why do I run in the desert every single morning? I'm striving towards my potential. What am I capable of doing? How far am I capable of running? how much can I endure? I enjoy that pursuit. Like, so happiness is that pursuit of what you're capable of. And that is expansive discipline. It's the ability of saying, like, well, what can I really do on this earth? Like, I love Elon Musk. I'm a really big fan of Elon. On first name terms, as you can see.
Yeah, he is. He's your friend in your
yeah. But I just love that he's the perfect model for this. He is just saying, like, well, what are we capable of? And that is expansive discipline. But what's the interesting part? If you haven't got great structure, if you can't manage your emotions, you're never going to actualize your ability
Expansive discipline.
Yeah, you're never going to reach your potential. So when you've installed those three things, what starts to happen is you overcome that self-sabotaging part. So that, I love how you tied them together. You did that, not me. And
comes with the preparation.
Yeah.
Comes with the preparation.
I've been trying to do this for a long time. And then so I got, over the last year or 2 years, I've worked with some great coaches, Benjamin Hardy being one of them, very, very great thinker. And he introduced this concept of 10x is easier than 2x. And expansive discipline, 10x, it's the ability to say, well, what's 10x? And it's not just about 10x in your revenue. It's like, how can I be, like, one of my clients I'm working with at the moment, he wants to spend 10 times more time with his family and make the same money. The money is fine for him. He's like, I'm making good money, but I just don't see my kids. So his 10x is to be able to take 10 times the time off. Equally, I've worked with companies. It's like, well, I really actually want to create a breakthrough service or product, which is going to 10 times my revenue. And so 10x is actually expansive discipline in the way that it forces you to disrupt everything. It forces thinking that will not come if you were thinking 2x. So CEOs traditionally are hired to maintain or just about improve the stability of a company and improve it over time. 10x is disruptive, it's problematic. But as you can see with companies like Blockbuster, like a lot of the companies that are just focusing on being stable, eventually you will get disrupted. And so if you're a CEO, you've got to be able to think 10x.
Well, we hear this all the time about the 10x thing, and we ask ourselves, what does that even mean? So just quickly tie it in. How do you make 10x better than 2x practical? Because that's what someone that's listening to this. Because it's like a very motivational thing to say, but how do we make it practical?
Yeah, I thought the same. It's very nebulous. It's very hypey. You heard it. Cardone talked about it for years, and it's not just about revenue. The first thing you need to do is, what is X? What are you trying to 10x? Like for you, Hussein, it could be free time. It could be confidence. It could be wealth versus a lot of people, a lot of high performers I've worked with as well. They have an extremely high earning rate. The rate at which they earn is high, but they haven't generated wealth. So they actually, like, a 10x for them is actually having wealth that reflects how much they earn, because they earn high, spend high. So the first point of call is to work out what it is for you or your company.
So define the objective, define the anchor point, define the goal.
Yeah, what do I want to 10x? What is X for me? And then it's a process of eliminating the pathways that won't get you there. The problem with most people's expansive discipline is that they think the path that they're on will get them to that 10x. For example, if you think about the growth we've seen in I think of a good example of this is, example I've been studying recently is I think a Blockbuster, great example, classic example. They thought that they just would be able to maintain their business model based on the late fees.
Just wiped them out.
Yeah. So they didn't disrupt themselves, they got disrupted. And so the pathway...
Not only that, for Blockbuster, they refused... Netflix said, hey, can you buy us out? They refused it. So, like, not only did they disrupt themselves, they sabotaged themselves, which takes us a whole loop.
Yeah, and so what you've got to be able to do is say, well, how can I create a new pathway based on my 10x? And the pathway being something totally different, which needs the structural discipline and the ability to manage the change and stuff like that. So I really like that concept as a tool for helping leaders disrupt their structure before they get disrupted.
Quick fire questions. I just want to make sure I get these to everyone that's listening, because I think they're gold.
Yeah.
So just just quickly tell us what are the 3 brain-based questions?
Okay, so overwhelmed. A lot of people who have come to me said, like, I'm overwhelmed. The 3 questions I asked is like, what's happening too fast? What's happening too slow? What's unclear? So then, because often overwhelm is like something's happening too fast. I'm overwhelmed by the rate of the company's growing, or that I have to hire, or the amount of tasks I have to do. The second one is what's happening too slow. I'm overwhelmed because this is taking too long, or what's unclear. Like, why is this happening? I'm overwhelmed because like I'm not clear what's happening here. And when you get those 3 things clear, generally overwhelm starts to dissipate. The other part is that when you're overwhelmed, you often need to raise your floor. You need to get rid of things that you shouldn't be doing.
Beautiful. What's one book that you would highly recommend?
Oh, based on our conversation. So one book. I'm only allowed one.
Go on. If you want to say 3, you can.
If you're interested in the self-sabotage stuff, it's Coming Alive by Barry Michaels and Phil Stutz. The second one is 10x is easier than 2x by Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. Great book.
Beautiful. Those are 2. What's a belief recently you've had to unlearn so that you can actually enter the expansive discipline?
That's a really good question. So the belief that I've had to unlearn is that I need to have someone above me. Like I need a business partner. Like we were talking about this earlier, is that I can't do this without anyone's help.
One last question is, what is the most powerful question a coach or anyone, to be honest with you, has ever asked you that led to you actually, taking a different trajectory or even just changing your paradigm in the way you think?
What do you want?
Simple as that. What do you want?
But I had a coaching session and that was the only question that was asked for about 30 minutes. But what do you really want? What do you really want? And it really disrupted me because that is the question. No, but it's not just the simplicity of it. It's like when you repeatedly ask someone what they really want, after a while you start to strip away all the superficial BS that we give, the stock answers, but getting really clear on what you really, really, really want is the most transformational thing that you can do.
And when I've done that with clients, the answer's always been, I want freedom and certainty. Not the cars, not the money, not the watches, not the business. They want freedom and certainty. Benjamin, it's been an absolute pleasure of mine to have you today. Honestly, I really, really enjoyed this. For anyone that's listening to this, I'm going to plug Benjamin's Instagram. He's got some freebies for you. The free 10x scorecard, the free momentum app. This guy's got it. Go there, check it out, click the links. And yeah, till the next time, stay limitless. Big thanks to Coach Benjamin Owen for showing us how to silence Part X, install real discipline, and think 10x. If today's conversation sparked something in you, for you, do us 3 quick favors. Follow the show on Spotify so you never miss an episode. Rate and review so that you can help other CEOs find us easier and quicker. And drop a comment below with your biggest takeaway. Benjamin and I will be in the thread. Until next time, keep leading without limits, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care and stay limitless.